nor must we countenance that political convenience determines responses to terrorism, extremism, and violence. Similarly, respect for territorial integrity and non-interference in internal affairs cannot be exercises in cherry-picking. When reality departs from the rhetoric, we must have the courage to call it out. Without genuine solidarity, there can never be real trust.
Speaking at the 78th United Nations General Assembly, India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar talked about India's growth story and how India has been able to achieve that. He also talked about an occasion which is to take stock of our achievements and challenges that the world is facing in the wake of epidemic and the financial impact of it, which the world is still under pressure from. Also, he's talked about how the world has witnessed an exceptional period of turmoil as it is structural inequities and uneven developments have imposed burdens on the global south. We can refer that in context of the climate change policy that the world is calling upon the other entire communities to act together with, and also the debt restructuring that has largely impacted smaller countries in the Pacific Island or countries in the African continent which have not been able to achieve their growth potential, and a lot of infrastructure development have come from loans from other major economies, and now there has been some sort of debt trap to which these countries are falling victim to, and these debts are now being leveraged for some geopolitical gains by certain countries. Also, as Jaishankar pointed, how Delhi summit of G20 was in a way achievement because it was able to create a joint consensus on various issues in a divided time. We have seen world very much divided on the issue of Russia-Ukraine conflict, how the energy security, food security, and issues like climate change, energy transition should take the center stage rather than the political and geopolitical differences. And India was in a way very much able to achieve that consensus and bring out the common or joint declaration under the G20 presidency. Also, External Affairs Minister has highlighted the fact that reform of international financial institutions have been given to weight as has a resolution of debt and vulnerabilities, and also from the era of non-alignment how the world has changed. He underlined that we have now evolved to Vishwamitra, a friend to the world, and this reflected in India's ability and willingness to engage with a broad range of issues and nations, and when necessary to harmonize the interest. He also talked about the issue of terrorism, issues of sovereignty and integrity, and how the world should run as a rules-based order. He said that how we must address global challenges imbued with the conviction that we are one world and one family with one future. He has also said that with the kind of sovereignty and integrity issues being propagated by certain segment of the world, it should have a common and very much acceptable norms. He also talked about the rules-based order, and that the countries who are on a position of strength or position of power cannot only decide how the rules-based order will work, or it will not remain unchallenged forever. Talking about internal affairs or the interference in the internal affairs, External Affairs Minister was very much direct, and he said that the cherry picking of issues on the issue of interference in internal affairs of a particular country cannot go along, and the world has to take note of it. World has to understand that the sovereignty and integrity of all the countries are as much important. Probably that was a direct hint at how the killing of a terrorist, a Khalistani terrorist in Canada, has created a diplomatic row between the two nations, while the Canadian Prime Minister has been claiming that it was a killing by the Indian agencies of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil. India has long been saying that Hardeep Singh Nijjar was a dreaded terrorist involved in crime, involved in violent activities, threat and intimidation to the Indian communities and Indian diplomats in Canada, and was also fomenting an anti-India narrative on the lines of Khalistani movement, which was going against the sovereignty and integrity of India. So where is the question of sovereignty and integrity? If the world has to talk about it, it has to talk in unequivocal voice, where there should be no discrimination between the global south and the global north. Also, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar talked about how India has been able to bring out the voice of women, the Voice of Global South, how African membership in the Indian under the India's presidency at the Delhi G20 was an achievement in a way that it did ensure that the Voice of Global South will remain with the mainstream G20 alliance for a long time now. Also, one of the major, the core of India's G20 was how the voice of women should get a platform at G20, and women empowerment was one of the key focus area of India's presidency during G20 summit level talks. So this was all that External Affairs Minister was addressing at United Nations General Assembly, and he has a lot of engagement in the next 3 days where he's going to have meetings with his US counterpart. He's also going to have some addresses in universities and probably a few think tank event also, where we can assume that he will have more engaging conversation about India's foreign policy and how India sees the world and how the world's issues India and the Indians' perspective on various challenges and the priorities that the world should right now focus upon.